Welcome to the Newton County Insider Podcast, where the outsider gets the inside scoop on all things Newton County and the surrounding areas. All right, and continuing our theme of youth sports, I've got Jon Ewing on the podcast with me. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Nice to be here.
I appreciate you coming in. I'm really excited. Appreciate you working on the scheduling changes with me and still following through.
Hey, we just playing around the storms. That's our goal.
Yeah.
That's our goal.
Got us another one coming in hot and heavy, so we may have to take a break to seek shelter. But all right, well, I think we'll kick things off. Just give us a rundown on who Jon Ewing is.
Yeah, so I grew up in an area that was real similar to this in Clinton County, the Frankfort, Kirkland area. I always kind of I think the similarities are kind of eerie to me. It just explains how similar Indiana is as a whole. The school district I grew up in was a two, almost three town. Like you could basically say it was three towns with Forest and Boylston being smaller, but we had five schools that consolidated into one in the 60s, and this one had three, and the distance between each of the towns was real similar as well. It's kind of funny, school in the middle of the country and nothing else really around it. But that was Clinton Central, and I went there until ninth grade. I had some family stuff go on, and I ended up moving in with my dad in West Lafayette, and I graduated from Harrison, which is the complete opposite. It's a monster. I went from 60 kids in my graduating class in ninth grade to 580 in 10th grade.
Wow.
So just complete culture shock. My first day at Harrison, there was two girls started fighting, and one literally rode the other down the stairs like a surfboard, just punching her in the face the whole way. So that didn't happen in the cornfield I grew up in, right? So that was kind of neat. But I saw like the best of both worlds in the small town and the big city school. Harrison's now 6A. They're like the third smallest 6A in the state, but just massive facilities and school district. It's still booming on that side of Lafayette too. So graduated from there in 2007, and never really thought that. Always wanted to be a football coach growing up, but never really knew how I was going to make that happen. I didn't have any guidance into that. Went straight into the workforce. Started as a salesman. I was selling lumber, and then eventually got into cars. After that, kind of fell into a job at Tri-County as an assistant O-line coach, and I was really only there part-time, and I started there at 19 my next year. So my brother, his wife had graduated from Tri-County, and she was real close with their head coach. Their head coach needed help. We came in, and then that first year, we went to regionals.
Wow.
Definitely the last time the Tri-County had won a sectional. I think the one before that was in the mid-90s. So talking like 2007 that year, going to a regional game and playing against our arch rival growing up in Sheridan, and they eventually went and won state. But it was a relatively close game compared to what everybody thought it was going to be. I think they beat us by 2 or 3 scores. They had one of the top 5 best 1A football players in the state in Nick Zachary, the brother to Sam Zachary, who's our AD here right now. Kind of weaving that pattern with Sam on how we've kind of crossed paths here and there. I spent 5 years at Tri-County. Once again, started as a part-time and worked my way up to a full-time O-line coach. And just, in my personal life, kind of hopping jobs to find ways to keep coaching, and didn't want to take a break. And I got really close with a couple of the players as far as, trying to mentor younger people and show them like, hey, I'm a few years older than you. I'm not some 40-year-old guy who's trying to yell at you to work harder. So we had some success there early on, and then our head coach left at the end of really told the team at halftime, week 1 of the 2008 season. 2009 season. And we had some growing pains with that, and the program was really shaken. We went from a team that won regionals to Coach Hedinger leaving, and then we kind of fell off the face of the earth with a young head coach who, I love him. He's a great guy. any coach that's going to get thrown into that role in the middle of the season in 27, like at 27 years old, like that's a hard position to be into. And he would say that to you today too. Like the program kind of stumbled. Just honestly, you know, real young coaching staff and not a lot of direction from the school, and the buy-in from the school was never bad. The parents there were great. The school itself was kind of pulling away from us in a few certain areas. And I'm sure there are people behind the scenes that might have had a better look that could say something different to it. For me, from my advantage point, I would totally say that the school just kind of left us high and dry. So left there. I took a year off. I went to Delphi and I coached there for 2 years under Josh Strasser, who's a mentor of mine. Every time I get the chance to see Josh, I'm always excited to see him, and taught me a lot. He's a guy that had won a state title and then had gotten his own team. And I really, that was the point where I wanted to be a head football coach, was working for him and learning the ins and outs and seeing the politics side of, you know, working in a building, trying to get certain things done, and how you can kind of, you know, make dinner out of chicken shit sometimes. With, you know, you're handed a bad hand and you can make good things happen. We had 2 really good teams there. Even though we had some adversity there. Our first year we had a kid who potential to be an all-conference quarterback, and he broke his leg in week 4, and we started a freshman who probably should have never seen the varsity field at all that year, and then still went and went to a sectional championship game. So had some success there. My life kind of took a turn when I was at Delphi. I went back to college, and I was at Ivy Tech, just trying to get credits, you know, on the cheap side, I guess. And I'd kind of run out of time there, and I knew I had to make a change and go somewhere else. Purdue, for whatever reason at the time, weren't willing to accept me, even though I don't think it was a GPA issue. So I didn't get into Purdue, and I transitioned to looking into get to St. Joe up here in Rensselaer.
Okay.
And this would have been the spring of 2015. Everybody that's listening now understands my St. Joe story, I guess, because in 2017, in the spring of 2017, they announced they were closing. I would have graduated from St. Joe in December of 17. You know, and that time, St. Joe did a lot of really good things for me. I have nothing terrible to say about St. Joe other than I wish they would have stayed open. I transitioned to IUK and had some stuff happen, and you know, worked at McCutcheon for my student teaching under IUK, kind of trying to finish up that schooling thing. Once I got out, went and didn't really have a direct line to teach right away because of my degree stuff. I had some other life things. I went through a divorce and lost the house that I had purchased with my ex-wife, trying to figure my own stuff out. I got into running the restaurants I was working at, kind of went into that lifestyle, and coaching kind of stepped aside and took a back seat. Then, as we were talking earlier, I have 5-year-old twins. So in 2019, found out I was going to be a father. I was just turned 30. Was super excited about it, ready to go. And I took over at another restaurant group, a little more local. Took a promotion to go there. Was real excited about it. Realized pretty quickly that I was going to get burnt out. Just the amount of hours that I was having to work and trying to be a father still and all that stuff.
Late nights, I imagine.
Late nights and you know, 7 days a week. I mean, that was really what it was. Was starting to look at other paths on what I could do, and met the head football coach at Lafayette Central Catholic. He came into the restaurant one day, and I was talking to another coaching friend of mine, and the whole conversation started as he walked in. Brian Ney walked in with a camo Bears hoodie on, and I'm a huge Bears fan. So the 49ers were playing the Packers in the playoffs, and if you're a Bears fan, you realize that you know, if your team's not going to win, the next best thing is watching the Packers lose.
Yeah.
So I walked up to Brian, and I had no clue who he was. I shook his hand, welcomed him in, and, you know, said something about like, "Hey, we're all 49ers fans tonight, right?" And he just chuckled. And then I went over and was talking to the buddy of mine, and we were talking. You know, he was still at Tri-County and working, and we were talking about, you know, what he was going through. And I get called over to Nay's table, and his whole thing was like, "You know football." And I was like, "Well, you know, I guess, like, I've coached, and like, I'm like, what are we talking about here? Because I don't know who he is, right?" finally he explains to me who he is, and he was like, "Hey, here's my number. I want you to call me, and I want you to come like see our program and work for us." And at the time, I was completely against it. I grew up in that small little public school I went to at Clinton Central. We were rivals with Central Catholic, and they were the evil private school who recruited.
Yeah.
I can attest to that. Like, I remember we beat them my 7th grade year really bad. My grade at Clinton Central was really, really good. We beat them really bad in 7th grade, and 4 or 5 of us got letters in the mail from that school trying to see if we were interested. I don't think that happened coincidentally,
No.
Like, it happened because of what happened on the football field.
Yeah.
So my conversations with Brian were pretty tough, and just like, hey, I can't see myself here. You got to put me in a position where I can see it. Things started to happen at the restaurant group too that I wasn't excited about. So I had a conversation with my wife. I actually had a week off. And then when I came back, I was just like, I think I'm done here. And it was mutual. Like, we both were unhappy with each other. And I called Brian and I was like, hey, I'm going to make this coaching thing happen. Like, what can we do? So I got a long-term sub job in that building and that next fall, and I started working there. That first year it was my only year at LCC, but we went to a regional. We lost to Andrean, a big 2A school from up north. They had a Division I middle linebacker who plays for Notre Dame. He was a monster.
Yeah.
We didn't have anybody that could match him. That's for sure. Played in a regional game once again, furthest I've ever been, and I'll never forget it for those guys. Winning a sectional trophy the second time, being able to have I think it's still my Facebook profile picture, me holding my daughters with a sectional trophy. My wife right there. Like, that was the first moment for me where I was like, all right, like, this is gonna happen. I'm gonna make it happen somehow. And conversations with Nay after that season were like, hey, like, you're better than where you're at right now, and you should move somewhere else. You should start to look. So put together the resume and built what I thought the program should look like. I applied to 3 jobs. I applied to Clinton Central, which is where I grew up. They had an opening. I applied to Twin Lakes, which is a 3A school over in Monticello. And I applied to North Newton. And the only reason I applied to North Newton was because I knew Sam. Actually, when I was at Delphi, our offensive coordinator was Sam's oldest brother, Brett. And Sam and I had linked up a few times at coaching clinics and hung out because we were both younger than everybody else on staff. And, they wanted to go to the casino. And I was a 22-year-old kid who couldn't afford to go to the casino.
Right.
So Sam and I had hung out when he was, just starting up at St. Joe. And then I'm at St. Joe. Sam's at St. Joe. Like, we know each other. We're both history and poli-sci guys, and our classes kind of commingle. And it was just kind of like fate. I don't really believe in that, but like it worked out for us. So I had a couple of calls with the other schools. Nothing really came to fruition as far as an interview. I got my first interview up here, and as Matt said the other day, it was Matt and Julie Deckard and Sam were my first interview, and I was nervous as hell. I really, when he was like, he came in with energy, I'm like, I was scared. I don't know what the hell he was talking about.
Yeah.
I questioned his ability to interview if he thought that was energy. But they called me back. And I think that was the coolest part. And I didn't hesitate when they offered me the job, even though they were pretty honest with me that it wasn't a great situation. And, I don't think I realized how difficult that first year was going to be for me. I had some other stuff. I thought I had guys that were going to follow me. And eventually one of them did. It just took him a year, and he wasn't able to come up that first year. But Coach Smith, he left a job and came up to teach, and he's with me now. Yeah, that first year was rough. I came into my first practice. I had 9 kids show up. I don't know what you know about football, but it takes 11 to play, right?
I know enough.
And I ended up with a group of 6 or 7 seniors, I believe. And those kids gave me everything they had. They really did. And I was honest with them from the very beginning. Like, we weren't gonna be the most successful team in the world. Like, we're not winning state this year. I can promise you that, guys. And it's really hard. You come into that probably the first 5 or 6 practices we had, you try to break up into groups, but then I look around and I'm really the only coach that's there. Luckily we were able to pick up another coach from the Rensselaer program that kind of stepped out of their youth program to come up to our high school program. And I was like, hey, by de facto, you're now the defensive coordinator. Like, here's the playbook that I have. Unless you have something else, run with it. And, you know, to Coach Ayler's, you know, he was put in a situation that he couldn't succeed in. And I realized that, and I have no hard feelings for him. But, you know, we didn't succeed. Our record kind of shows that. But those kids in particular, and they've heard it a lot. Like they're the ones that put the foundation for the program that I'm building into place. And I can't say enough good things about them. And they all know that. A couple of the things that I kind of hang my hat on from that season is we went 0-10. Our average loss was by like 48 points. It got to the point where I wasn't worried about how much we're going to lose by. I'm trying to find small successes. So, you know, if I don't want to lose by more than 21 points, we can get to a point where, you know, all I do is we run dive and try to get first downs and burn the clock and don't do any of that. But that's not my offense. That's not how I want to play football. And I want us to have successes. So what are we going to do? We're going to drop back. We're going to throw the ball, and we're going to go up. And we're going to get a running clock on us. And we're going to be aggressive doing it. We're going to do it our own way. And realizing that, yeah, that doesn't look great on the scoreboard. But, you know, we had a couple of nice completions on the side of the field, or we hit on a couple of our quick combinations and back-to-back, and we get a first down, and the whole crowd roars, and our kids feel better about themselves. There was a lot to say about that. Instead of just, hey, we're going to run the same 4 plays over and over again, and you're going to feel like you're bashing your head against the wall, but we're only going to lose by 35.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I can't live that way. That's not the way that I live my life. I kind of do what I need to do to get by, and like, no, I'm going to take risks, and we're going to challenge the status quo, and we're going to push. And I felt like we did that, and maybe it didn't look the best to some people, but you know, we were also essentially a JV football team playing a varsity schedule, and it was rough. You know, we talk about those seniors in that class. I think only one of them had played more than 1 year of football at that point.
Wow.
So then, you know, you're just at a point where you're behind, right? And once again, nothing against those kids, but when you're that far behind everyone else, it's hard to succeed. And we didn't have the infrastructure set up for them rolling into a small rural school without a full coaching staff. And, you know, that first season was tough. And coming into the next season, it was really that February.
Give me a year. Where are we at year wise?
So this would have been last year.
Okay, so we're talking now moving into last year.
Last calendar year, February. Okay. So literally a year ago. I made the phone call again to Coach Smith and trying to get him to come up. And, you know, it's a tough situation to tell somebody, hey, I want you to leave your career. I want you to transition to another entire career, and I want you to come help me coach football because I know that's what you want to do, right? And in my heart, I know that I'm right, but I also know that's a logical decision you got to make, and that's really tough.
Yeah.
Finally, I talked him into it somehow. I must be the world's most convincing person, I guess. But he's up here now. So finally, I got the message from him that, hey, I want to be there. Let's figure it out. And then, you know, along with that, he brought another friend of his, Coach Ed Eckeblad. And Coach Ed kind of runs our weight room, and like those two guys have transformed everything I've done. You know, with Coach Smith coming in and taking over the defense and kind of making it his own thing. And you know, he's young in the coaching thing, but he's lived football his whole life too. And we understand the game. We kind of grew up together. So my years at Tri-County, he was my fullback. He played center for me 1 year. Like he was our leading rusher as a freshman. And then his sophomore year, we had to beg him to play center. Imagine the mentality that it takes to do that. And then finally, you have to go back and play fullback for the last 2 years. And he went to college and played D3 ball, and you know, had some family stuff. And he ended up at St. Joe too around the same time that I was there. So, you know, the core group has been around each other for a long time, and that feels good. And we brought in Zeph Conley, who's our offensive coordinator last year as well. And I was really, really stressing on making him an offensive coordinator. I was like, hey, you can just be the quarterback's coach, and I like this play calling thing, and you know, this thing's my baby, and I'm kind of creating it. And then finally in week 1, I was like, you know what? There's other people here. They're not doing much, right? Well, I mean, when you're a quarterback, you're coaching your guy. I get it, but like when there's only 4 of us on staff. Right. And I feel like I'm the head coach, and I'm talking to a ref, and I look up and I've got 10 seconds to make a play call. I got to call timeout. Right. Like now I'm hurting the team. And so I looked at Zeph after a couple of things and like didn't feel like I was doing a great job and was really struggling in it. And I was like, hey, you're calling plays now. Yeah. And he goes, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm here. I'm going to help. But like, we're going to do this thing together, but you're going to make the ultimate decision. And he's been around football, once again, D3 football player at Anderson, and grew up at West Central, so he's familiar with North Newton, and kind of the level of kids that we're getting at these younger levels, right? And especially where they came from. All of our kids kind of grew up in like the wing tee, right? I'm the furthest thing from that. I football wise, we're going to run 75 formations, and we're going to spread out, and I'm going to run man beaters, and I don't care what coverage you're in, we're going to beat it somehow. I think total in our playbook, we've got like 1,200 plays.
Wow.
That's not entirely true. We run concepts based off of formations, but we can tag things and get nuts, right? So it's really a college level playbook, and I realize that. But we're teaching our kids football through that playbook instead of just trying to shove a playbook down their face. And we've had successes with it, right? I think back to last year and the year before too, right? I took a senior quarterback who had never really played quarterback in both years, different kids. I've had, one off season with them, and in both cases, not even a full off season. And I've made them productive football players, right? The ability to read a coverage and the ability to understand what's going on in front of you. And yeah, it probably didn't happen as regularly as I would have liked. But you connect on a 60-yard touchdown pass, it feels pretty darn good. And I don't care what anybody says. And to take kids like that, once again, great kids, not the biggest football guys. And I think they would both agree with me saying that. Football wasn't their first love. It might not be their first love now, but they both enjoyed the sport to a point where they worked their tails off for it. And I can't say enough good things about them. This will be our first year where we've had a young we're going to be young at quarterback. It'll be a sophomore or a freshman. And it's, we've had time with them. They've been in the system. Both of them played it in junior high under Coach Gibson. And they're running our system. It's not the full thing, right? We're kind of dummying it down a little bit for junior high kids, right? And I teach them all day. I know how smart those kids are, right? It's like playing with O-linemen all the time. O-linemen are the smartest kids on the team. I promise you that too. So we're kind of muddying it down a little bit for them, and then all of a sudden, they're going to come up and they're going to get the full thing, and they're working on it already. So we're excited about where we go, and knowing where we've come from to where we're at now, like it's night and day. It's night and day. And I can't say enough about the program and the community support. I can't say enough about the things that we've done as a staff to build our kids up. We were talking today about, we've got, I think it was 4 kids that were above 900 pounds in the weight room. Like the weight program didn't exist before we got here. Granted, I was the first one in the building, so I had more time to try to get more kids up there. But like, that's not my forte. I mean, you can look at me and tell that I'm not the biggest weightlifter in the world. But we bring in Coach Ed, who's a training power lifter. Now the weight room means a little bit more because you got a guy up there who's going to back squat 500 pounds all the time. Like he looks the part. So the kids and Coach Smith too, right? They look the part. The kids are excited to be up there, and we've had days where we've had 100 kids rolling through the weight room after school. Our weight room's not built for that. I don't know if there are 5 and 6A schools that are built for that.
Right.
So we have got our little rotation process, and we get small groups up there at a time, and they got to get in and out in 30 minutes, and we build our weight program around it. It's been fantastic. The support for that, beyond the football team, the support for the weight room has been the biggest thing for me that I've enjoyed getting everybody together on. So. Yeah, that was a long way around, like kind of where I came from and where I'm at. But, feel good about where we're at right now. That's for sure.
So something there at the end that really caught my attention. So I'm from Nebraska. I've got the hat behind me here to prove it. Something that I think really helped, if you know anything about the Cornhuskers history and, the 90s, I'll say.
Started the weight program.
That's right. Right.
Started it.
And it's fundamental. It's a core thing for any program. Yeah. And when they started that, I mean, that's how they got where they got. And
100%.
Now everybody's doing that, right? So they've lost that competitive edge there. I mean, they've got a lot of other things that go well for them, but that is the core for sure.
So, and I'm forgetting the coach's name off the top of my head.
Osborne?
No, the strength coach they hired.
Oh.
That would have been in like the early 80s, late 70s, somewhere in there.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. But like he got hired and he was like, anything beyond like the old school Jack LaLanne calisthenics. He's like, that was all teams were really doing. He's like, so I was the first one to really bring in, hey, we're going to squat and we're going to bench press and the Olympic lifts into football. And then he, that first year, I think the year before they may have won like 3 or 4 games. And then that next year, I think they went undefeated.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, okay, this thing might matter.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know yet, but if we take it out, that's what we were. Here we are now. So,
yeah. And the meal program and everything,
100%.
the nutritional programs are running. And
yeah, that's another thing that we're working on at North Newton. Definitely been sending emails for a year and a half on trying to get an after school snack program. And we're finally within the last month or two, we've started to get some like, hey, that's a good idea stuff. And it feels good. And it shows, like, I know that there's a lot of negativity around the school. Facebook's a cesspool for all of that, for sure. For anything, not just North Newton, but life in general. So, a lot of that stuff gets seen, but there's a lot of great things going on, and that stuff doesn't get talked about enough. And outlets like this are what it's meant for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's circle back to football. I want to start and try and like paint a little bit of a picture here. So had Coach Gibson on. I don't know if everybody's listened to that podcast, but if you haven't, go back, take a look at that. But he talked a lot about a pipeline, right? Like, so he's starting the junior high team and really wanted to prep those kids. And you touched on it a little bit. What's your two's relationship? What conversations are you having? And what's the, and then walk us through what's the future going to look like?
So let's start with when I got here, there was a Pop Warner program that was kind of in its like last leg. I don't know the whole story there, and I don't want to speculate. From my vision as a football coach at the top, right? It didn't seem like it was producing kids at a level that I would have expected. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And then there was some stuff where the people that were running it decided they didn't want to for whatever reason. I've heard a couple of different stories, and I don't know them personally, so that is what it is. But it's no longer around. So we're working on currently trying to start. I want to start flag football. I think for our program, we're not a really run heavy. We run the ball a lot, but we're not a downhill run only team by any means. And I think flag football kind of gives our kids the ability to spread out, go play and do the hard stuff, right? It's hard to throw the ball. It's hard to find quarterbacks if you're not throwing the ball regularly. And I think flag football kind of does that for us. And then I take great pride in my ability to develop linemen. That's my specialty, offensive line. So we've kind of leaned on that and said we want to develop quarterbacks and skill players. And I really want to get that flag football thing rolling. And I've reached out to a couple of the towns north of us that have flag football programs and trying to co-op us into it. And how that's going to look, I don't really know. I've got a couple of ideas. Maybe we start one in Morocco, we start one in Lake Village, we start one in Roselawn, and we play wherever we can. Then we build some sort of MVP team, and we come together and we compete against the northern teams. We could do that. We could do something where all 3 areas come together. We build the teams, we practice at North Newton, and we play there, and we play there only. Or after that, we create an MVP team and go north, right? I don't know if people realize that, like, building your own little league, like if we were just starting a new little league in baseball, that would be really tough.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the same thing that I'm trying to do, except I'm also coordinating with multiple buildings at the same time that I don't have, a liaison in, or it's not super easy, right? So we're working on how that's going to look. I don't necessarily have an answer at the moment, but I've definitely talked to a few people on what I want. And I think it's possible. I also think the other thing is, there are ways for us to secure the money and get the grants to buy youth helmets and shoulder pads. I don't have a Pop Warner trailer to purchase. Like, those don't just show up on the market very often. So, and then buying jerseys every year. And I think the cost for the families of, 3rd through 6th graders makes sense on our end to, maybe we go out and we buy soft shell helmets to make sure kids are safe for a flag team, and we buy belts and they got to buy t-shirts. Right. I think, you're a parent of a couple of small guys. And like, I think that makes more sense. The safety side for me, is huge. And we can talk more on what I'm doing with football and that. Yeah, definitely if you'd like to on that, I can talk all day. The safety side is huge too, and I think there's significant amounts of information that says strapping a helmet on a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, and letting them bash their head against another 7 or 8-year-old isn't great for their growth going up, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you talk about youth helmets, like the studies on youth helmets aren't very good.
Mm-hmm.
The Virginia Tech helmet study is probably the best one around, and I could be wrong on my numbers. I haven't looked at the youth side recently. The last time I checked, they only tested like 14 or 15 helmets. When you look at the varsity and higher levels, they've tested 130,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you got to wonder, do they do the same testing and all that? And I haven't dug into that. But I can say if we just go into flag football, the injuries are significantly less to begin with because we're not going to block that way.
Yep.
So I think those are the few things that are really big for me on, how do we keep kids safe? How do we get what we want out of it? And how do we compete? Like, I think competition level is big for us too. Does it make sense for us to go to Lowell and try to, put our MVP team against, in their league? Can we do this logically within the weather patterns of our state? I mean, hell, it's April 2nd and it was, 40 degrees most of the day,
Yeah.
Does it make sense for us to be outside and put our kids into that? And then here we are in April and we're going to start having weather, nasty weather like we've already talked about.
Yeah.
So how we make that look and what we do at the youth level is still in question. And I think there's a lot of logical answers, but we have to look at what we're able to do as a community and getting grant money and, how do we compete?
Mm-hmm.
How do we keep kids safe? How do we compete? And what makes sense for our program moving forward? The middle school level and Coach Gibson is, I can't say enough good things about what he's done with middle school, because if it weren't for him, I don't know if I'd be able to say that we're going to have 40 kids on the team next year. I feel really confident that we're going to have 40 kids on our team next year.
Yeah.
And I just told you, we had 9 kids show up to my first
Right.
practice. Imagine how that makes me feel. I'm a pretty emotional guy. So
4X.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like we're, like I was stacking helmets, came in on Monday for spring break and we finished our helmet wall in the locker room and like, man, there's only 42 up there. What are we going to do if we have 3 more kids that want to play, And it's like every week there's 1 or 2 more kids that I hear in the hallway, like, hey coach, when's football start up? And I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
Like I teach 8th grade, I don't get a whole lot of high schoolers. Like I don't, who's this human being? Where did he come from? So it feels good. Feels real good, but we've got our own questions to answer. And it all starts with Matt, and you can see it in our numbers per class. So we're going to have 6. Let me say it. We'll be lucky if we have 7 seniors this year, this coming season. And that'll be right up there in par with the last 3 years. But I'm going to have 18, I think, sophomores.
Wow.
Right. So in the time that I've been in the building coaching middle school gym and the time that Matt Gibson's been our junior high coach, we've been able to, you're talking almost 3-fold
Yep.
on our average numbers. And that speaks volumes on what he's been able to do. And then being our baseball coach and seeing, the numbers for baseball kind of, I stopped by practice yesterday. I was putting the gator away and, see him out there and there's like, man, I went to a lot of baseball games last year. I don't remember seeing that kid out there. I don't remember seeing that kid. Coach Gibson does a really good job of making things fun. And I think the other junior high coaches, you're looking at Coach Kat. She coaches, AAU basketball. She coaches girls basketball. She coaches, softball. She's our head softball coach too. And honestly, that's probably the best team in the entire building right now.
They won it last year, right?
Yeah, they won sectionals last year, and they probably should have won regionals. I think she would say that as well.
Yeah. Maybe I'll get her on.
I'll set you up. Don't worry. I'll get you. She's fantastic. Kat's really young. She's real energetic. Once again, it's hard to walk by her desk and not see, 4 or 5 kids hanging out, just kind of shooting the shit with her. And, she makes life better. That's what,
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's what it's all about. Those kids walk into that building every day and they're all, I don't want to be here. And then, some other human being has to make them want to be there.
Yeah.
And as a teacher and an educator, that's our job. As somebody that works in the building, that's our job.
Yeah.
I think of administrators, Tony Brooks, every day, that guy has to give out like 1,500 fist bumps. He's our assistant principal.
That's awesome.
That's just his thing. He's like, we're going to have a great day. Right.
Yep.
And it's like, absolutely, we will. I've walked in and been like, man, I'm struggling today. January is my least favorite month of the entire year.
Yeah.
I'm miserable in January. I hate the weather. I don't like being cold. I'm over it by that point. And like, I'm just done, right?
Yeah.
Christmas is tiring, right?
Yeah.
You get back in January, I'm just like, I'm just kind of beat. It's always dreary. You walk in and like Mr. Brooks is there, and you're like, all right, we'll be okay. We'll be all right today. So, all those little things for the program, and they're showing to me, and I say it, I've said it a couple times on Facebook, and I know the guys have heard me, but community plus pride equals culture. You bring a community together, have a lot of pride in that community. That's going to create culture around the building. And my outlook isn't just towards football, right? We've been able to get a lot of our kids to go wrestle. We've been able to get some of our kids that didn't want to play basketball, but like, hey, listen, you're 6'4", like go play basketball. Like you're gonna be a tall, lanky human being. Go play basketball. And I'm not saying they're gonna transform the next program, but they're at least another body to help around practice. Baseball is the same way, and real open and honest, the baseball is not my favorite sport. I don't think there's enough conditioning. And then by the time they get to me in June, they've all put on 20 pounds and sunflower seeds, and I've got to work it off of them. But I nothing like going out to the ballpark and watching some kid smash a ball. Like I get it, I understand. So we've tried to show, Coach Ed and his work with the softball team this year. Like he was talking the other day that the softball girls were working out, and how they were all like, hey, we want to work out more. Like, you ever thought you'd hear a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old girl say, hey, we want to work out more? Like, yeah. There's no way. I got an 11-year-old at home. Like, I can't imagine her saying she wants to work out more.
Yeah.
So like that stuff, and trying to show everybody we're trying to be a whole building and build culture around it, is it's probably been the funnest part of my job so far. The football wins. We had 3 this past year that felt really nice to get that monkey off our back, or as I said, the elephant off the field. But the stuff in the building every day is the fun part, right? And we see that in the middle school as they're coming up into high school, and it also helps that our current freshman class is super, super athletic. They're very talented kids in just about every sport that I can think of. There's 1 or 2 that you're like, let's just get you through your freshman year and get you some confidence, and we're going to see what's going to happen in the next 3, right? I think that's the fun part for us. On the high school field, we haven't had the most success. Like I said, that first year we didn't win a game, and we had a lot of bad losses. Last year we had a couple of really tough losses as well. But I also think that us going into even some of those games, like our Frontier game was probably the one that sticks out to me the most, is like the biggest letdown. And I don't think there's a kid out there that wouldn't agree with me on this, right? Even going into that game, they were undefeated. They had a first-year head coach, but he walked into a program that was set up pretty well for him. They had gone through their bumps and were mature, and we were still really young. And we walked into that game, it felt like we had a chance, and we made 2 mistakes in the first quarter that came back to bite us for points. And then being young, you're going to hang your head a little bit. It's our job as a coach to make sure that we don't continually do that. And I think a lot of that's a maturity. But once again, we're essentially a JV football team playing a varsity roster. And this year will be probably the year that we're about 50-50. We've got a lot of juniors that got a lot of playing time. We got our senior class is going to have a lot of playing time. But once again, they're really the last class. Then the numbers aren't fantastic for. They're not in double digits. My goal is 12 out of every class. So when you're talking 7, right, we're like 60%, and that's yeah, it's a passing grade, but it's not by a lot.
Not what we want.
Not by a lot, exactly. So as the growth of the program really starts with the younger kids and getting them success. I think back to week 1 this past year, we beat Whiting in a JV game, and that Friday we walked up and we laid an egg. The travel was rough. We, slow rolling getting up there for whatever reason, and didn't get through our whole pregame, and pregame was really clunky for some reason. They've been through it at that point 100 times, but it just didn't go smooth, and all the coaches felt it. Tried to get them all riled up before the game, and it just didn't go as planned, right? Same thing, a couple of scores real early, and we're struggling to, keep our chins up. And, we had a fumble. I can go on for it, right? Game ends, a bunch of our kids come over, and like right away, like, Coach, we just played a crap game. Like, we're going to be better next week. Don't worry. Like, I'm not worried. I'm upset. I'm not worried. Like, I know we're going to get better. And the next day, we're playing Whiting at home for a JV game, and we beat them.
Nice.
And it wasn't close. And you're just like, okay. And it was a lot of those freshmen, right? They saw it on Friday, and they're like, okay, this is different. This isn't junior high anymore. We're going to step in, and we're going to play our role, and we know what to do. We're going to play calm. And then they got up, and then you kind of felt the energy rise, right? They let a couple of things slip, and then they put their foot down on, in like halfway through the fourth quarter, and you really started to feel it. Like we're trying to get this game over with, right? And I remember our offensive coordinator calls plays for JV2, and he kept throwing the ball, and they were up 2 scores. It wasn't a blowout by any means, but they were up, and I was like, I like sent him a text. I'm like, hey, will you run the damn football here? Like, let's get out of this before we make a couple more mistakes and let them crawl back in. And so the game ends, and we take pictures, and like going back through it, like that was the first win on Dick Gilbert Field in like 4 years.
Man.
So, breaking that streak, right? That's a monkey off your back.
Yeah.
And then week 3, we beat Lake Station, and a game that they're a team that wanted to grind the football and hold all the clock. And we were able to put a couple of touchdowns up. I think we put 2 up in the fourth quarter, if I remember right. And no, we put 1 up in the fourth quarter to go up, and then we held them out. And it was like, that's a moment I'll never forget. Like, I never need another Gatorade bath in my life. I don't know if any of the players are listening to this, but I need 0 Gatorade baths from here on out. And the next Gatorade bath I get better be from someone who's taller than me, so I don't take the Gatorade jug to the back of the neck again. That was probably the worst part. I thought I was going to get knocked out and not be able to celebrate anything. But like, my brother's been with me. He's normally up in the booth. Jon Ewing. He's been our quarterbacks coach, kind of off and on. He lives in Lafayette and works in Lafayette. He's a finance manager at a car dealership, so getting time off is not easy, right?
Yeah.
So he gets a chance to come up on Fridays and kind of built the offense together through our coaching years. And so he kind of understands what I'm trying to do and what I'm looking at, and it's always been good to have him in my ear for sure on Fridays. Keep me in line for sure. He does that a lot.
That's good.
So, Jeremy walking down on the field and just giving him the biggest hug, and then hugging my kids and my wife, and like, seeing my wife cry. Like, she barely knows what a football looks like. She doesn't care if we win or lose, but like, she knew that moment was going to be big.
Yeah.
And that was a cool thing. So, that's the growth of our program has been immense. It's also been, we're celebrating little victories sometimes, and that's
okay.
tough to swallow a lot as a coach, because you put so much time and effort into this thing. But we've found a way to make it happen, and we're really enjoying the process. That's for sure.
Yeah. And there's something to be said when you walk into something that's in a really tough spot, and you are the one that gets to kind of steer the ship into the direction that maybe it turns into something great.
I mean, they make movies about this, right?
Exactly.
That's why the whole thing about the Bad News Bears and the Mighty Ducks, like that's what the whole movie series are about, right?
Yeah.
It just didn't happen in the first year for me, right? It didn't happen in the second year. It's probably not going to happen in the third or the fourth, but eventually we're going to get to a point, and I really believe this. When you look at our conference, we're a conference of a lot of small. We're the largest school in our conference by not quite 100 kids, but I think it's pretty close. I could be wrong on that. I think North White's like 260, and we're like 320, I believe. So whatever. I'm bad at math. However you want to do that. But conference wise, and I think enrollment matters for sure. In Indiana, at least, I haven't necessarily dug into other states, but enrollment in Indiana, like the bigger schools are typically the better schools in those classes.
Yeah.
And we're near the top still, even though our enrollment has declined. I think socioeconomic class matters a lot in our conference. It's pretty even everywhere you go. I look at our community sport, and I've once again coached in this conference at Tri-County before. Know what all these schools are going through, and more than just what's in our conference, because the conference went through a huge change in the time that I was gone. But like South Newton, West Central, like we're all real similar, right? We've just got a bigger enrollment, and I'm about to put 40 kids on a team, and I don't think any of them are going to have more than 30.
So That's huge, though, right?
So
Like you should be there.
we should be, right,
Yeah.
right. And the other struggle that we're having right now is like, we're gonna have a JV team, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know the last time the South Newton had a JV team. I can't speak to it, but I know it hasn't been in the last. I don't know if they've had one since COVID. West Central, same thing. I don't know if they've had one since COVID. There was a story a couple of years ago of a school over in Cass County that they played the football season with 13 kids. Caston was a school.
An entire season with 13
kids. Right? And that's been the numbers are declining in football and everybody knows that, right? But for us, like, we're growing. And that's the hard part is like, as a coach, I want to keep my team on an even level with everyone else, right? And I don't want to put us above where we're at, but like, we're looking at summer competitions and it's, I've got 40 kids and I want to get enough reps for everybody, but does it make sense for me to go, scrimmage another 1A school that they got 25 and I'm only going to get, partial reps with my JV team? I don't think that makes sense. And that's I mean, for everybody listening, like that's the kind of struggle we're having now. It's no longer, man, how am I going to get enough kids to play? It's how do I get all of these kids to play?
Yeah.
Right. And I think on the other side of that is, we go into Friday nights of this summer or this fall, and it's, I want to get every kid to play, but does it make sense to put some of those freshmen on a varsity field, even in a blowout game, if the other team doesn't like, I got to find levels of competition that are equivalent for everyone. And how are we doing that in, make sense in our schedule? I think that's a big hurdle for us to get over. And I've talked about it with our athletic director a couple of times this week already. So, we're in a position that's vastly different than the rest of our conference in our football program growth. And I remember when I first took this job, there was his name's Clay Scott. He's a salesman, or was a salesman. He's retired now for Winning Edge. They're a equipment company.
Okay.
T-shirts and footballs, right? If
Yep.
I needed anything, I could call him. And Clay Scott's been around forever. He's a big proponent of the IFCA, the Indiana Football Coaches Association. He's at every meeting. I've known him since I was 19. And I walk in and, it took him a second for him to realize he knew who I was. And then he's like, you're going to take this program over and like, you can do big things up here. He's like, I always thought this place was a sleeping giant. And you look back and they've had success, right? 2017, they won a sectional. They went and played a really tough Woodland team. And it didn't go their way, right? That happens. They've, Matt's team, he's talking about playing an Indiana legend at West Lafayette that year, and like all of that stuff has happened at little old North Newton. And, the kids have a vision of what everything is, and they don't realize like, but if you go somewhere else relative to us right now, like it's not going to be as good as what you're in.
Yeah.
And I think that, you want to talk about some of the growth and the progress we've had. I think that's kind of where we're at, is we're talking about growth. We're not talking about staying the same or getting smaller. We're talking about getting bigger and how to make this thing better at all times.
Yeah.
So
one thing that I wanted to ask you about, so when it comes to the pipeline, kind of stepping back a little bit here, but last year, in order for my kids to play any type of football, we had to take them to South Newton to go to the flag football program, which seems a little bit backwards because they go to school in Morocco, which therefore they should go to school in North Newton eventually.
right. What grades were they?
They were kindergarten and second grade going into third.
Gotcha. So once again, the Pop Warner program would have been where they would have fit. That kind of fell apart in 2022.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So the Pop Warner program for North Newton was the flag football program equivalent that you see at South Newton.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, South Newton is starting, I think next year, they're starting a full padded youth program.
Okay.
I believe Coach Beavis has talked about that. Maybe he's still working on it, but I'm pretty sure they're going to start next year. Once again, I don't think they're going to play third and fourth grade in pads. I think they're just going to play fifth and sixth grade. Brad, if I'm talking about that wrong, I apologize. I'm pretty sure it's been a few months since we talked about it. So if I'm wrong, I'm terribly sorry. For us, like I don't love the idea of putting kids that age in helmets. If it were my son,
No.
If it were my son, I wouldn't do it. And I'm glad you feel that same way, right? We can talk about, you know, the studies and what I've read in that. And I promise that I pay attention to that stuff real close.
Yeah.
So, you know, I really don't love putting a kid in a helmet until 7th grade.
That's exactly my age.
I think that's the right age as far as development, right? Like you get away from, I'm not a doctor either, but you get away from some of the softer brain stuff for kids at a younger level, and then they're easier to teach, right? The idea of putting a 4-pound helmet on a 6th grader and expecting them to tackle with their head up,
Yeah.
right, is rough,
Yeah.
right? 3rd grader, that's unacceptable. Like I think you're putting your kid in danger, and like that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
So the flag football stuff, once again, I'm literally starting a little league program from scratch, and it's not going to happen overnight, and that's kind of where we're at. And I'm also building a varsity program, and I'm also you know driving the bus with middle school and making sure those kids are coming up and trying to find it. And it's a lot, and I'm not going to use that as an excuse by any means. Like I don't know if there's anyone in the world that could have had it all done by now. I'll say that.
No, that's fair.
So, and the other thing, this isn't a knock on the school district, but we also have 3 elementary schools, right? And trying to get them all coordinated is notoriously tough. You know, I think of one of the other sports was trying to run a camp, and that coach sent out a youth camp letter to, like, you know, a couple of the elementary schools, and like one or two of those schools sent her back a reply like, hey, are these printed? If they're not printed, we can't hand them out. So then she had to physically print them at the high school, drive them to the elementary school on her lunch break, and have them delivered. And like, that's not a shot at anybody, but like that's not how we do business, right? Like that's kind of the stuff when people are saying stuff about, like, those are the stories that I think about. And I'm not saying that's been my experience, but that's definitely the experience of someone who I've worked really close with. And I don't mean anything negative about it, but like, if we want to talk about an experience, there it is. And like, that's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. And then, as I said before, like, how do I want to make that program look, right? Do I want to go north? Do I want to play it all? Like, are we going to be competitive enough amongst ourselves? Am I going to have the numbers amongst ourselves? All those questions come into play with flag football. So I know, like, trust me, it hurts my heart. I told you I didn't want to use the red microphone, right?
Yeah, that's one of my questions.
Okay,
here.
so let's get into that real quick. So in our conference, every school except for us and North White use the color red or some form of maroon or whatever, right? And then you got Rensselaer down the road. They're red.
Yeah.
So my kids know that we don't do anything with red. I've physically made kids change their shirts. I've made them change their shorts. I think yesterday I walked over to the baseball practice, and one of my football players is playing baseball, and he's got a red batting helmet. And I made fun of him. Like, I was like, I can't make you change it, but I can make you know that I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't own red. Part of this is also I'm a Michigan fan, so Ohio State, right?
The blue works good.
That's right. Blue and orange, right? I'm a Bears fan, so it works out great. But yeah, like we kind of started that our first day. There's a sign in our locker room, like, what did you do today to beat Rensselaer? Rensselaer week, I print off big red R's and I put it on their locker, and I want them to know, like, see red, hit red. Any of the practice pads, is I'm starting to look into building up our practice pad and getting some new stuff. They're all going to be red.
Yeah.
I want our kids to know that it's okay to hit anything wearing red at all times. And I'm perfectly okay with it. So
you won't like my kids' baseball team colors then.
Well, like, I know it's silly.
No,
like,
that's not silly at all, man.
But at the same time, like if we can't stand on something as little as, hey, we don't like the color red, right? It's never going to turn around.
Yeah. That's how you breed culture, right?
Amen.
And passion, and
I already talked about it, right?
Yeah.
Community plus pride equals passion, or equals culture.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. I like that. Yeah, and that's I was going to end on this question, but I think it's a good spot to throw it in here, is who's the one team you got to beat every year?
So for me, and I've said this from my first interview, when I look at our current schedule and I look at teams that we beat, right? The two big ones are Rensselaer and South Newton.
Okay.
Number one, they're the closest to us geographically. Number two, we have the most history with those teams, right? And without having them in front of me, I could misspeak on some of this. I apologize. We've played Rensselaer every year since, and I have records back in 1992.
Okay.
But we played them every year since 1992. We've only beat them once. We beat them in 1993.
Dang.
Our average loss. So you're talking 32 years on a current losing streak for 32 years, and our average loss is by over 45 points.
Wow.
Right? You know how many times I've been asked if I want to take them off our schedule?
How many?
10, 15?
Yeah.
Easily, right?
Answer is no.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right? And they're a 2A team, almost 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, they won state. I actually coached against them when I was at Delphi.
It's 2014. They got a sign as you come into town.
That's right. And I've known Coach Meeks and Coach Nowin over there for a long time. Once again, been in the IFCA and been around those guys. And we used to go to, when I was at Tri-County, we would go to St. Joe's football camp every summer, and they'd obviously be there. And it was a big deal for us. We always wanted to scrimmage against them, and it was always hard for us because they were in the big school bracket. We're in the small school bracket. A lot of our kids have kind of, in my experience as a coach, a lot of our kids, like all those Tri-County kids knew the Rensselaer kids and vice versa. Same thing here, right? The big thing that I've seen at North Newton is we've had some of our numbers in the community generally have kind of dwindled, right? And a lot of our kids are going to Rensselaer. Thinking that first year that I was here, their running back, and he was hurt at the time, but he was a North Newton kid. Like his picture's on our wall when he was in junior high, I believe. His name was on our weight as an all-time lifter, and I think it was his junior and senior year he played at Rensselaer. That's tough to swallow, right? We had another kid who graduated, and I think he's still playing football down at DePaul in D3, but he went to KV and led the state in special teams touchdowns his senior year. Went to I think he went to state in the 200 in track. That stuff hurts. I don't appreciate that. And if kids are willing to leave, right? And those guys left before I got here. I got nothing against them, right?
Yep.
But if kids are willing to leave, what does that say about us? And that's kind of how I go about it. I think about that literally every day.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to chase a kid off and let him go somewhere else and be a star, right? And maybe I go a little too far with some of that. But I'm tough. I'm tough on kids. I'm really hard on them. I don't know if anybody that would disagree with that. I think of a time they messed up last year, and I think they ran 6 miles. Yeah. Right. And on top of that, then they ran at the end of every summer. We have a thing called the Agogi. Agogi historically was the Spartans education program. That's why I named it that. We do a dad's practice at the end of July. That's actually the week before our week 0, so it's the last day of training camp. We do this big practice. There's a big workout set up, and it's an hour long. It's really hard. And these kids messed up in the middle of the year. We're talking beginning of October, I believe. They messed up, put something out they shouldn't have in a group text. They ran the cross country course twice, and then they went and did the Agogi. We didn't practice at all that day.
Good for you. Right.
And it's, for me, we talk about, I don't know if you saw the handprint on my back. That's kind of what our program is built around. It's called High Five. The H stands for hard work, the I stands for integrity, and then the 5 is all built around the hand. It's, the pinky finger is the individual. You can chop your pinky off and be just fine, right? Just like a team can lose an individual, probably going to be all right. May feel it a couple days, may have some phantom pains, whatever, but we're going to be just fine. And then the ring finger is your unit. Right, you're the O-line guy. I'm gonna talk in O-line terms all the time. I hope that doesn't bother anybody. So I'm a guard, right? I'm in the unit, right? The unit goes into the group. The group goes into the unit. So a unit would be the offensive unit, defensive unit, special teams, whatever. That goes into the team. The team goes into the thumb. The thumb's the program. Okay. And we talk about the program a lot. Everything I do, the program, the old Michigan, the team, but I talk about it as the program. And I do that because I want our kids to know that that's bigger than me, right? If I hurt the program, they're going to know about it because I'm going to apologize to them. And I have.
It's the integrity component.
100%. I think back to my first year, I got a penalty. It was kind of a funny story. I won't say what I said out loud. But I was yelling at one of our kids for a missed tackle. And his name happened to be similar to the back judge's name. And the back judge thought I was yelling at him and threw a flag and gave me a personal foul. And like we came back to practice on that Tuesday, and like I talked about it on Monday, and on Tuesday I did my 50 up downs and let those guys know that like I made a mistake. It's not going to happen again. And like once again, the program's bigger than me, and I kind of instill that in them and let them know that like how many no one out there would have taken their job if they had to rely on 14 to 18-year-old kids. Like I don't know what you do for a living, but I'm assuming if you had to rely on 14 to 18-year-old kids every day, it would make your job really hard.
It would be difficult. It would be difficult. Yeah.
Right. So that's the career that I chose.
Yeah.
I have to rely on 14 to 18-year-olds. So we're going to work as hard as possible. We're going to try to work harder than anyone else around us. That doesn't guarantee us anything. It doesn't promise us success, but it gives us the ability to have success. Integrity means you're going to do the right thing when no one's looking. We make sure that, now we come back to that group message thing, right? No one was really looking at that. And the reason the whole team got punished and not just the kids that, communicated amongst that was nobody stopped it.
Mm-hmm.
I got no information that somebody tried to physically stop it. Right. So everybody got punished.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
So we're going to work hard. We're not going to lie about it. We're not going to try to hide it. And then we're going to play for something bigger than ourselves. The Rick Pitino video that came out right before March Madness, where he's talking about playing for the name on the front of the jersey, not the back.
Yep.
If I think I had 15 kids bring that video to me within the next week, like, hey, coach, I've heard you say this 100 times. I'm like, yeah, it's crazy, boys. Like I don't think I'm Rick Pitino of high school football by any means, but like coaches are all pretty similar. We all understand what we need to succeed. And, that moments like that are kind of what we strive for. So, talking about the program, like I do it every day. And I talk about the football program to middle school kids. Not because I expect them to play or anything like that, but I know that they see it on a daily basis. I know they see our kids, the older kids, and they look up to every day. I know they're seeing those kids walk around in these hoodies and they're like, hey, what's that? It's a handprint. Oh, I've heard Coach talk about that. Right. I know what that is. Ewing's you're rambling on about it all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So, little stuff like that. I think it helps for sure.
Yeah. And I'll end it with saying, in my opinion, there's a lot of times that hard work beats talent. There's a lot of that.
It absolutely can. I've seen it a bunch locally in the state of Indiana, I should say. There's a couple of teams that like, they don't ever have any all-state guys, right? They've got decades of experience in winning football games for a reason, and it's because they work really hard at it. They've been in the same system for so long. They're not going through radical changes. I'll speak about Pioneer real quick. They're a team that, from the mid 80s, since, they're consistently winning double-digit games every year. They're consistently moving on into the tournament. They've had 2 head coaches in that time, and it just, it didn't miss a beat, right? They just sent a kid up to, this would have been about 6 years ago, but they had a kid named Jack Kaiser. I don't know if you're familiar with college football
I'm
like I am.
familiar with college football, but that name don't stand out.
So he was the starting middle linebacker at Notre Dame this last year, right? 1A football player from the state of Indiana, like playing at a school that might have 250 kids in the building, right? Real low numbers, and goes up to Notre Dame, and he's a multi-year starter up there. He just ran in the combine, like going to get drafted in probably the 4th or 5th round this year. Like you would have never expected stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I talked about Coach Zachary's older brother. He was a quarterback at Sheridan, and he went to 4 state titles. Really, he was the one that kind of set the path for kids like that, because he was the first Division I or first 1A player to get a full Division I football scholarship in the state of Indiana. And maybe that's not in history, but it was in a long time, right? That just doesn't happen nowadays, right?
Yeah.
But we've got stories like that all around us, and it's because of those programs, consistent winners, right? And like, if I'm winning 10 games a year, like I can get any coach in the world to come see me.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Yeah.
Right. I had some contacts at some of these bigger schools in the college ranks in the state that they're always like, man, I'd love to come see you. Like what you're talking about. We go to coaching clinics and we draw stuff up on whiteboards, and they get excited, and like, I'd love to come see you, but like, you don't have anybody for me.
Yeah.
And they're right. I may not have a Division I athlete right now, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to have one in 2 or 3 years.
Got to build those relationships today, though.
Build them up and then start winning football games, and everybody's going to come, right? If you build it, they will come.
Yep.
So
well, I'm going to ask you to speculate now.
uh-oh.
Yeah. So
my stock market portfolio is not very good. So
I'm going to ask you to speculate. So came from a really small neighborhood or town and community back in Nebraska. I mean, really small. And we're talking Class D. I don't know if that translates to Indiana or not.
Were you still playing 11-man football?
No.
You were playing 8-man?
Yep.
Okay.
So really small school.
I understand. And we have 8-man football in Indiana.
Okay. I didn't know that. No.
Yeah.
I haven't dove into sports. I haven't found a lot of people in Morocco that are sports fanatics. Like,
we got to talk more.
Okay.
If you want to talk football, I got you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, you don't see very many flags hanging. I think we're one of maybe 3 or 4 houses that had a college football flag hanging in town. So like, I don't see it a lot. And so you talk about pride and community equals success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, why don't I see businesses with Spartan flags hanging in their windows? Why don't I see Friday night, or businesses promoting the games? Like, what's caused that?
Right. So,
and let me tie it back. So, because in that tiny little town of just 360 people, my wife owned a business in town, and they came around hey, you want to buy a $40 flag to hang in your window? Absolutely.
Right. I can't speak on the stuff before I got here. Right. I know I've heard a lot. I can say that much, right? I've heard a lot of stuff, and the separation of the community and the school is something that I talk about a lot in our building with our administrators, and how do we repair some of that?
Mm-hmm.
I came from a private school before I got here, and we didn't have bus routes at that school, right? When I was at Lafayette Central Catholic, it was a bunch of stay-at-home moms that dropped their kids off every day. It was crazy, right? So there's a little bit of that with me, and how do we fix this? So I definitely think there's some outreach stuff, and I actually talking to my athletic director today. We had a head coaches meeting for some stuff in our handbook that we were putting in, and one of the things we talked about at the end was something similar to this: is how do we get more community outreach? How do we build some of that? And we're both really young, and Sam and I both grew up. We grew up at competing schools right next to each other. So the town that I grew up in, and we were consolidated. The town he grew up in was not a consolidated school district. So Sheridan, they're probably around they might be a little bigger than us now. They're kind of in Hamilton County, and they're getting a lot of that indie growth.
Okay.
Kirkland hasn't really seen any of that, but Kirkland and Sheridan is the second or third oldest rivalry in the state right now. Basically been played every year since 1920. Except for the war years. I can find some really cool old articles about that. And Morocco actually has some really cool history. If you want to write that down, we can talk about that in a little bit too. So Kirkland and Sheridan, super old rivalry. And when those two teams would play, I think about my brother's senior year, which was the 2003 football season, I believe. They played in the first or second round of sectionals. And they've got more seating at Clinton Central than what we have now. And you barely had standing room around the fence.
That's great.
Every bit of 3,500 people there, right? And we're talking about where we grew up, and Main Street would close down. The bars would close down in Main Street, and they'd be hey, we'll be back after the game. You'd see those signs, and right out of Varsity Blues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Similar. Here with multiple towns, it's really hard. I think the other part, Roselawn being so connected to the interstate, right, is going to create some tough, you can't close down if you're an interstate business, right? And a lot of that's corporate anyway, so that's another struggle. I would also say business wise, there just isn't a lot, and you drive by and see, Sam's doing a really good job of selling signage and stuff for our golf outing, and then currently it's all hung up around the baseball diamonds, and you can see the signs that we do, and there's some outreach from the businesses there.
How does a person like me that doesn't go to the high school, I like to golf?
Yeah, we gotta. So there'll be the golf outing will probably be in June.
Okay.
We'll start putting stuff out, I would assume, in the next month.
Okay.
But we'll definitely get some stuff to you. So most of the schools communication, if you're not on the like the email list or the text list and all that stuff for the school district, most of it, like you can get it basically everything off of Facebook.
Okay.
What I found out when I came here, I came from Lafayette, and we did everything on Twitter.
Oh,
I'm
not on Twitter.
I would come up and start putting, like, I built a football page for us on Twitter and stuff, and like been pretty active on it as far as sending stuff out for recruiting, because that's the best way to get around. And our kids are about to find out about all of this too. But like I would get 40 views on Twitter. I put something up on Facebook for the first time, and it's like, oh, you got 700 likes, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
There are 700 people here that care. Like I wasn't sure at first, that
Yeah.
first year, still trying to get my feet wet and all that stuff. So, yeah, the Facebook page is probably the best way to get all the information. As far as driving the community, there wasn't really a push for a long time, and I don't know what that was or why or anything like that. Once again, I wasn't here. We're both new to the area, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's not being worked on, and it's just everything's a slow process. There's a lot of change in the district as well. I know that you talked about it already a little bit. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
Honestly, it really hurts people, like me and Sam and Coach Gibson and all the other people in the building with the administration, trying to make things happen. So like it's not going to happen overnight. We all have to realize that. But yeah, we're working on it. Don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry. And like the flag thing, we gotta find a place to make the flags, right? And yeah, there's a bunch of national companies that'll do that, and we can send it off. But there's some financial stuff in the building that doesn't allow us to do that.
Oh.
They're like
So like 4imprint.com.
Yeah, so
use
we have to get a PO for everything.
Oh yeah. So
Like,
you're like
I don't
my
want to get
business.
too much into it,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, like there's little things that are all just like little hurdles. I feel like to do something super easy, I feel like I got to do 8 other things that I shouldn't have to do, right?
Gotcha.
And that's always been part of it. And I think for some people, especially looking at it, like if you got to do that for everything, it's hard to get motivated to do anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? And yeah, I'm not saying that's the right mentality, but I can see why people get there
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, if you remove some of those barriers, people are more apt. I mean, that's just human
Right.
nature.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, like once again, community plus pride equals culture, and we're trying to create culture. So we got to bring the community in, and we got to create pride, and those are not two things you're going to do very easily. And first and foremost, we got to start winning more games, not just in the football field, but in every sport for sure, right? We struggled in basketball this year. We struggled in, we haven't gotten to the level we thought we should have in a couple of things. Like talking about the softball team, like they're winning trophies. And, like I know my football guys, they heard me just say trophies, and they understand because I talk about it all the time. Every little thing from a north-south game, right? There's a trophy in every sport for north and south, right? We need more of those in our building. We don't have enough, right? And we won't have enough until we have them all.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Those are trophy games. We have a trophy game in football with West Central, right? We haven't won that one yet. Every game after the sectional game in every sport is a trophy game. It's either winning the trophy or you get another plaque for it. And that's important to me, and making our trophy cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've had communications with some of our alumni about rebuilding our trophy cases, because I don't like the way our athletic wing looks. And we gotta fix some of that stuff. And we've got alumni in our building that have gone off to do really cool things, right? Why we got to celebrate them better.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's all important stuff. And once again, you're bringing community into it. You're going to create more pride around what's there. One of the monikers, and I'm going to hate myself for saying this on record, but one of the monikers the kids have had for the building when I first got here was North Nothing. I've heard that, and I don't hear it. I don't hear it enough anymore because I refuse to hear it. Right. But I kind of understand why they would say that. Right. There's some things that we don't look the best in some areas. Right. And it makes sense. And when you're a kid, it's hard to see the big picture. Right. That's why I talk about playing for something bigger than yourself. And as an adult, kind of seeing it and like put yourself in their shoes, and like, it's easier for us when we're looking back at that age group. It's hard for them to do it to us because they've never been there.
Yep.
Right. I know what it's like to be 15. You know what it's like to be 16, 17.
Yep.
They don't know what it's like to be 35. So really, really trying to get all that stuff taken care of. And then on top of that, I was hired to coach a football team. I was hired to, teach 8th grade PE, and, the work schedule on that. And like, I'm never somebody's going to tell you no. Like if you need something, like put it on my plate. I'd rather you put it on my plate and me struggle than make somebody else struggle around me because I didn't want to do it. And I do that stuff around the building all the time. So, it kind of weighs on you. And then I also have a young family home. So I know a lot of people kind of feel that, and that's not me making excuses for anything. My excuses are lies. No one cares. I need to work harder. I get it. But at the same point, like some of that has to take some weight from somebody, you know what I mean?
100%. So cool. Real quick, you mentioned you're in the guard, or military guard, or you played guard?
I played guard.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. So talk to me.
I grew up in a family with a lot of military personnel. I would never tell you that I was one of them. I promise.
Okay. No, I just wanted to, it was something I caught, and I was going to thank you for your service. And so you talk like you're an O-line person. You were in the offense. You kind of let that go. You've got the recruiting going. Sounds like you got the staff you've been really hoping to kind of get in place. 500 this year. What's 5 years from now look like for the program if it's successful?
Man, I don't even know. I haven't met those kids yet, right? Yeah. And I wish I could tell you. I wish I could sit here and tell you, hey, we're playing at Lucas Oil. Yeah. Like we're playing like the last 2 years I've talked to our kids like, hey, don't make plans for Thanksgiving, and they think I'm joking, right? But I want to get to the point where like we play our state championship game the weekend of Thanksgiving every year.
Okay.
Right. That's how the state is set up, and it's never going to change. So like I wish we were there, and I wish I could tell you in 5 years we're going to be there. I really don't. I don't know how long it's going to take. We've got an immense amount of buy-in, and man, I woof love to feel like we're going to be there. Just once again, I'm not going to try to predict the future. And when you're talking 5 years from now, right? So far, all of the teams I've coached, here have needed a big freshman and sophomore, group to kind of help in those teams and help them compete. I haven't met those kids yet.
Yeah.
So, I would love to think, we've got 2 quarterbacks this year that can, really throw the ball, and we're a little bit of an option run team as well, and like try to football wise, I'm an option run lover, and I love the air raid. So like I'm Mike Leach's worst enemy in football. Like, rest in peace to Mike Leach. Like he just rolled over in his grave when I said that.
Yeah.
But to be able to do both is really difficult. Well, both of them are also really good athletes. I think that's key.
You got to have that, otherwise the option's not going to work, right?
So, we're looking at the high school level and what we do, and then that affects the JV level, and we want to be able to balance success for both of those teams and win at all levels. That's our goal. In the junior high level, I know that they're looking for their next quarterback. They don't have one. We're trying to figure out which one fits us best, right? And that doesn't even mean maybe the better quarterback might be our best receiver. And does it make sense to play, 1A or 1B at quarterback and, 1A at receiver? We don't know how that's going to look yet. And I don't want to make any excuses for, or any ideas that we have any clue, because we really don't. Not to mention that they're both in other sports right now too. So, one's running track and one's playing baseball. So, being a small school, I don't get as much time with my football athletes. Like I think, Harrison, the high school I graduated from, just today on Twitter, I saw their spring football schedule. They're going to have, I think they're allowed 6 days between a certain point in April. I don't have the ability to do that. Right. We're going to try to run some extra time in May, as far as like, just teaching the game and getting our kids' mind back into it. Maybe not even like full offensive installs, or defensive installs, but like just talk football, right? Hey, I got a game I want us to watch.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what do you think about this play? All that stuff. Maybe we talk about special teams rules, because there's not a kid in the world that knows all the special teams rules, right? Hey, if we block this field goal, is it a live ball? Is it dead? What, all that stuff. And I think that'll be valuable for us moving forward into the season. One of the things that I think about with how the schedule looks is I would love to go compete in June. Right. But because we don't get the spring games and we're the springtime like everybody else does, we're not through our installs totally. So does it make sense for us to go compete with, 4 or 5 schools our size somewhere when we don't have a full offense in? Like when
Yeah.
I'm gonna run 5 or 6 plays at you out of a few different formations. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if our kids get a positive feel out of that. Maybe as we get better, right, and we can run the ball a little bit more effectively or whatever, right, and we go have some success there, and then we can build it in. But like until I feel like we're going to be successful at everything we do, like do I put us in that situation where we go get our butts kicked in June, hang our heads, and then think,
Yeah. Go into the season on a low.
right. And I don't know the right answer. I don't know if there is a right answer there, right? Every kid's going to react to that differently. So those are little things I think about.
Okay. Well, quickly hit me with the Morocco history you were talking about.
So I don't know how many people know this, but in 1917, so this is before a state tournament. This is before the IHSAA. Morocco. The major newspaper in the state has always been the Indianapolis Star. The Indianapolis Star named the town of Morocco's high school football team the state title. So we're coming up on 110 years in a few years, and we'll play Whiting at home that year for the season opener, and I would love to do a big celebration for that. Like, I don't know if they did one in 2017. I don't know how many people really know that, right? So I have the article saved on my laptop from the Indy Star, and they talk about Sheridan actually was the other team that was undefeated. There were no common opponents, but the writer specifically went to a game for Morocco, and he said that Morocco was a better team than Sheridan, but Sheridan and Morocco couldn't find a place to play at the right time around Thanksgiving.
No kidding.
So yeah, 1917 needless to say, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I would assume at this point that no players on that team are alive.
Yeah. That's pretty
you'd be
safe
like 120, 125. So.
Yeah.
But there might be some grandkids that have got stories and stuff, and I think it'd be really cool for us to put a presentation for that together, and try to find everything we can for it. So if you're out there and you know some more of that, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear it and find little tidbits that you may have saved, or maybe a yearbook from that time. There's somebody talking about it or whatever it might be. So once again, we're talking first person history right here when I say that I have it saved. Like it's a microfilm picture cutout of that article from the Indianapolis Star in November of 1917.
That's awesome.
So
That's
yeah,
cool.
there's history here, and I talk about it. We talk about how there's not enough history in football in our overnight camp. That's how we kick our training camp off. We talk about it, and I wake the kids up at like 1 a.m. after a long practice, and we walk into the main gym, and I open the lights up, and like, hey, what do you guys see on that football? Like, oh, there's like 6 numbers up there. Yeah, but when you look over at baseball and you look at softball, how many numbers are there? Oh, there's like 20. Okay, there need to be more numbers, right? And that's winning conference, winning sectionals, winning regionals, winning semi-states. We only have one state championship in the entire history of the school, and that was a 100 track in, I think, 1995, Mike Hinch. I walk by his big picture every day, and I think to myself, like, man, it's really cool that he's there, but how cool is it going to be when there's a full football team there? Right. And hopefully we get there one day, right? But until then, it's that one guy. But I want to see a full team there. Not to take anything away from him, like that's a special accomplishment. He still holds the 100 record as rightfully as he should. And I hope that we beat it someday.
Yeah.
Right. I hope we beat it in track, but. We got to start winning more. I want to put more trophies. I want to force the school to build bigger trophy cases. I want to force the school to recognize more things. And I know that everyone in that building would be happy to do it.
Oh yeah.
So I would get no pushback in that. And I think that's the reason I want to do it.
It's a good problem to have right there.
Absolutely.
All right. We're going to shift gears here. I'm going to get into the school district stuff. You kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. So anybody that's on Facebook, like you mentioned, knows that there's a lot of turmoil in the school district. Matt talked about it a little bit. I've heard that we're kind of to the point where we've hired a superintendent. I don't know if he's interim or not. Maybe you can speak to that too. But from your perspective as somebody who's in the school, because Matt's not, right? He's not
Correct.
in there every day. He doesn't work there. So what are some of the challenges you see, and what maybe rights the ship here? How do we fix this as a community, as a school?
So, I'm a teacher and I focus on my class a lot, right? I think the biggest challenge so far that I've noticed is the turnover. And I had somebody say it to me today where it's like, in the last like 3, maybe 4 years, right? It's just been problem 1, problem 2, problem 3. And they're not like, hey, we've got a kid who's in trouble, right? No, we're talking about like superintendent stepping down. That just happened. Last year we got rid of a superintendent. The year before that, and I was before I got there, but they had a principal step out, right? And you're talking about shifting pieces around, and I think everybody so far has been capable to do the job. But when you're only in it for 6 months, when you're only in it for a year, or you get thrust into a new position after being in your previous position for a few months, that it's a hard place to succeed, right? And I don't think that's saying anything crazy. I think that just means that like there's something to say about continuity, and there's been a complete lack of it in certain areas and in important areas, right? Now, you talked about the new superintendent that was hired. I believe it's an interim situation. Everything I've heard is he's in place just until we get somebody else in place. I could be entirely wrong on that. I shook his hand. He came into my classroom his first day. I shook his hand. I've also heard that he hasn't really left the area and he's been working real hard. And I know that we're getting emails constantly from him about updates. The big thing is the financial system right now. The board talked about it at the last meeting, having this new financial system put in place. We talked about orders, right? I can't support that more. Let's get some things taken care of on that side, right? So, the lack of continuity, constant change, people getting moved around and shifted just to try to, keep water off the ship. This is essentially what we've done. And I've seen it in the teaching staff. I've seen it in administration. It's a struggle, man. I can't think of another place that would succeed to everybody's wildest dreams with a situation like that, right? It's really hard. As a community, I think the biggest thing, and I've started to do this as well, right, is go to every school board meeting, right? And I know it sucks, right? They're not fun. Nobody's sitting there with a smile on their face. It's not a comedy show. Like, it's real life, right? So go into school board meetings. Don't be afraid to talk, right? Don't just whisper to your neighbor. Don't just talk about it in your front lawn. Don't be the person that just puts stuff on Facebook. Like, go be present. And being present means using your eyes, your ears, your senses, right? Don't just sit there and hope for everything to pass over so you can get home to a hot dinner, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really the biggest thing, and make your voice heard. I also think, we're talking about a school board, right? And votes matter. I think voting matter. I was a history and poli-sci major in college. I don't know if I said that earlier about St. Joe. So voting is your one right, really.
Yeah,
you don't get a whole lot of rights.
It's your most important one, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. Like, all the rest of them can kind of be taken away at any point. We've seen that in history, right? So, that's the one that you really get the chance to say what you need to say with it, and I think that's important. Now I probably have some disagreements with some of the things that's happened. I don't necessarily love every decision, but we're not supposed to. We're not built that way as human beings. So I also really don't think it matters, for me to sit here and say that I'd rather like this over this. I'd rather us do A over B or anything like that. That's not my purpose. My purpose is just let's get everybody involved. And once everybody's involved, if that's what the majority of us want, let's go for it. And let's have somebody in place with a plan, and then have them there long enough to create a plan. I think about myself, and if everybody would have run me out of town after my first year and said I sucked, who would I have been to tell them no? Who would I have been to tell them that they were wrong, right? The situation I walked into was bad. It's going to take time for me to fix it. So if I'm not given that time, if nobody's going to stay in their position for longer than 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, nothing's going to get done here.
Yeah.
We got to find a way to make this a place that people want to be, and then they're going to stay. And that comes back to a lot of the things that you've been hearing about, right? Think of all the reasons that people might want to leave that you've seen on Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. And let's try to start fixing those problems one by one. And I'm willing to talk, if there's a school board member that wants to talk to me about what I think and, have a private meeting, let's do it. I'm not afraid to have a conversation with anybody. I've made that very clear. I would also say that, those conversations have been few and far between. And I'm the lowly old football coach. Like, maybe nobody cares what I think, but I've been in 4 or 5 other buildings. I've been in some buildings that are really successful. I've been in public schools. I've been in private schools. I've kind of been around, and I went to school for education as well. And, had some teachers that were superintendents and talked about, stories they've seen, and mentors that have been in other buildings that I talked, they see stuff. Like, I think of one of my football mentors called me when some of the teacher pay stuff was going off on Facebook. Like, somehow that ended up in front of him on Facebook. And he called me and was like, "Hey, are you doing okay?" I'm like, "I'll be fine. I'm good. I'm having the time of my life up here. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, I'm reading stuff and it doesn't look good." And I'm like, "Hey, I need you to like just trust me. Like, I'm good. Like, I'll be fine. Like, I'm gonna find my own way."
Yeah.
Right. My life doesn't revolve around everything you read on Facebook. But if somebody wants to talk about how to make it better, or somebody wants to have a conversation on what I think, let's have that conversation. I'm more than happy with it.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that, and I really like your approach too. And anybody that's had an adult job, I'm going to call it, there's going to be something you don't like that's happening at that job. It doesn't matter,
100%.
right? I always you talk to people. I know a lot of people have left a job. They get to a new job. The grass wasn't always greener either, right?
Yeah.
So like everywhere's got a challenge, and it's just trying to make sure that the ones that are there are manageable and people can palatably move past those.
Right. And I think the other thing is, like, if I'm going to have a disagreement with you, I'm not going to make it personal.
Yeah.
I think that's something that this community struggled with. And that's not a shot at any one person. Don't take it that way, because I think it's a broader issue than just one person. I think a lot of times we've made things personal. If I'm going to have a disagreement with you, I say this all the time too. Like, I don't get mad at people. I get mad at situations. Right. Don't put me in a situation I have to be uncomfortable or upset in. And every situation's different. That's the best thing, is like, I have a kid yell a curse word in class. Like, I'm not going to yell at them because they yelled a curse word. I'm going to yell at them because of, the situation they put me in, that I have to yell at them.
Right.
Right. And I think sometimes people get that mixed. Like, I'm a big dude. I'm 6'5". Like, I'm slimming down a little bit. I'm about 280, right? 275, somewhere in there. So, like, and I got a deep voice.
Yep.
Right. People take me as I'm angry all the time. And, like, that's not the case. Like, if you think I'm angry all the time, you don't know me.
Right.
So, when we start to have conversation, and I'm not attacking anybody. I want to talk about it, and I want to get things hashed out, and we can agree to disagree at the end of the day, and move on and come back to it later if we got more information. And I think that's something that maybe hasn't been prevalent in some of these conversations that have been had. And whether that conversation, it wasn't with me, because I haven't had very many of them. But I think that's been a big issue. It's been a real big issue. And for as good as Facebook is with communicating interpersonally and creating, that social concept that social media has done for our population, it's also really bad at context.
Yeah.
Right. It's really hard. How many, there are trains of study that are based around what an author wrote. Right. That's all philosophy really is deciphering what somebody wrote on paper.
What was their intent?
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if we're going to sit back and like try to understand context through written word, it's difficult, right? We need body language. We need
tone.
Right. It's huge. It's huge. And we don't get that. Right. So I think there's some stuff that the school could do to be a little bit more transparent, as far as, maybe video. And I know they're going to have to start soon. Right. But videoing every meeting. I also, maybe having a meeting every other week was probably hard to get people there. It's a little easier to plan once a month. I know that kind of slows the process down, and that's not fun. But creating more hurdles for people to get over is that's all you're doing, is you're creating more hurdles. But at the same point, like, we got to get through some of this stuff, and we need to get through it quickly, and we need to have answers that are going to be there for continuity.
Yeah.
Because I think that's our biggest problem, is we've had a complete lack of continuity.
Yeah. No, I could see that, right? I think Matt was saying 4 superintendents out of the last 5 years, or 3 out of the last 4, or something like that.
That sounds right. We've had Well, I mean, if you're going to count the interims, it's been 4 in 3 years.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, and like nothing against any of those individuals, nothing against them at all. Like 4 people in 3 years, how do you expect to get anything done?
Yeah.
Right. And like, that's a fact of time. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to swallow. So, you know, it's frustrating, but I also realize that, you know, for us to get to a spot where we've got to do that, like there's going to be some growing pains as well. Right.
Oh,
And
100%.
the next person, if the next person they hire is here for 10 years as a superintendent, right, there's going to be growing pains in the first year.
Absolutely.
Right. It's not going to be fixed this time next year. And I realize that it's going to be a slow process, and then everybody has to understand. Right. And until we understand, like, we can't just chase the next person off because it's not fixed in 90 days. That's not how the world works.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my rant.
It'd be nice to be able to snap your fingers and have it be perfect, but that's never the case. Right. And yeah, it takes people that are, you know, there's a leadership, I guess, a thing in leadership called above the line and below the line. And when you're above the line, you're very open, curious, thought provoking. When you're below the line, you're very closed off, argumentative. And I think if they do get somebody new hired, like the staff has to be above the line, right?
Agreed.
Like, in the culture right now, from what I hear outside looking in, is probably fairly below the line, right? And so you're gonna have to get that culture to where they're above the line, they trust you, and then good things can start to happen, and that don't happen overnight.
Right. I think the positive for us is, and I speak to this a lot too, where it's, you know, once again, my job's more difficult because I deal with 14 to 18-year-old kids, but it's also easier in some ways, right? It's really easy to get a 14-year-old kid excited sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's something as little as giving them a, you know, we were talking about stuff in sports programs earlier, so it's the thing that's coming to mind. But when you're talking about jerseys, right? Like if I put a Nike check mark on a jersey, you know, I could draw that thing in Sharpie, but the kid's gonna like it a little bit more.
Yeah,
you know, it's silly. 100%. Like all of us understand that with kids, right? Yep. My daughters are 5, and they understand what. You know, if I put you know, Paw Patrol on a T-shirt, they're gonna wear that T-shirt more than they are the blank T-shirt.
That's right.
Right. And I think, you know, it's those little things, right? You know, how many cream colored, white colored, and brick colored walls do we have in our building? Right. What can we do to spice that up?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what can we do to just put a, you know, and I know it's been argued on the school board about paint, but like making things look better, like kids buy into that right away.
It's a pride thing, right?
Right. I agree with you 100%. I think that, you know, it's not hard to get a 14-year-old kid excited. Like, oh man, that blue and orange wall looks better than that tan wall.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, yeah, it does, buddy. I agree with you.
Yeah.
So little stuff like that. And I think, you know, if we can do it in places where the kids think that they had something behind it, right? Give them a little skin in the game.
Yeah.
Right. I think those are things that are going to go really far.
Yeah.
And those ideas take time. Those ideas take, you know, we got to plan them out. We got to figure out how we're going to pay for them. Right. Because all that stuff matters.
Yep.
And I'm not discrediting any of that. But once that stuff starts to happen, the kids are going to buy in. And then once the kids are in, the parents don't have a choice.
Yep.
I firmly believe that. That's one of the things I've talked a lot about with the football program is like, hey, I want the parents to enjoy this thing, and they're on a ride for 4 years, right? They're just along for it. Like their kid's the one driving the bus, and I realize they just have to drive their kid to the bus sometimes.
Right.
But once they're there, like I got you. We're like we have to get along.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we want this thing to be successful, we have to get along.
Yep.
So we got to win the kids over, and once we get the kids, we'll get the parents.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's cool. We're at an hour and 40 minutes right now, so I'm gonna try to wrap this up here. What's one thing we haven't talked about that you want to make sure that the folks listening take away?
Yeah. So as a football coach and football in modern America, we'll say, like, you know, post Will Smith movies about concussion. There's a whole connotation of what a football coach is, and I know that you know, there's definitely the group of parents that I've had so far over the last 2 years. They've heard me talk about this a lot, where it's, you know, I do worry about safety. I do worry about some of the things that I've heard have been said, you know, were said about coaches before me and my sport in general. And I want them to know that I think about that stuff. And one of the things I'm really proud about is how much we've been able to evolve this thing in a short amount of time. And go back to little victories. So all of our kids in the varsity field next year are going to be in 5-star helmets. So, we talked about that Virginia Tech helmet study, right? Once again, I study all this little meaty, like the small stuff, right? I get down into it. And that Virginia, it's the best study around. There are a couple other ones that don't get into everything. All of our varsity kids, though, they'll be in Rydell speed flexes or speed icons if the speed flex doesn't fit appropriately. So they're in a 5-star or a 4.5-star helmet, only if the 5-star helmet doesn't fit correctly. They're all going to be in Guardian caps, which are the gel coated caps, right?
Yep.
So just in headgear, right? Just in that helmet and the Guardian cap, the helmets are about $450 to $500 a piece, right? Roughly, that's their going cost without discounts. And then those Guardian caps are about $100 a piece. So just in headgear, we're putting $600 in on your student, right? We talk about safety. We talk about academics as well. And I'm going to space on the number, but it's 3.17 was our GPA in football in fall semester. To the best of my knowledge and everybody else in the building that I asked, that's the highest GPA that they can remember. So safety, academics, right? We talk about this year we were recognized by the IFCA as a good works team. And what that means is we went out and we do stuff in the community to try to help out. First off, I did put something up on Facebook and I didn't have anybody reach out to me about needing help with debris from the last storm or this storm that just blew over us.
I did see that.
I've got kids that are more than willing to, and parents that are willing to drive them or coaches that are willing to drive them to go help clean up yards. If you know anybody that needs any help, please reach out. The other thing, on Wednesdays, the first Wednesday of every month, we go to the Lake Village Presbyterian Church. We go to the food bank, and our kids help sort food. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. They get a church lunch.
It's probably a pretty good lunch.
It's real good. I've only had a couple. I don't go every month because I got teaching duties. But, our kids miss one class on a shortened day in the week. And they go get lunch and they go help out the food bank. And they serve, I think it's like 75 families a month.
Yeah.
The first time we got it set up, Coach Gonzi set us up with it, and Diane Nelson is my contact there. Diane and I are like, that lady's a saint. I love her to death. No one will ever say a bad word about Diane to me because I won't believe you. But she has been amazing, and how grateful she is for our guys' help. And she wants to learn their names. And we get snacks like 4 times a year. We don't ask for them. She's like, hey, I'm gonna come into school. Give me a time, and I've got snacks and keychains made. And the church is super thankful for all the help we give for them there. So we're talking about safety. We're talking about academics. We're talking about community give back stuff. Those are the things that I talk about more. I talk more to those football kids about those 3 things than I talk to anything to do with a football. I promise. I'm not here to make good football players. I'm here to make great community members. And the football stuff will come along with it because they realize that I'm here for the right stuff.
Yeah.
Those are the things I want people to understand, and why, like, I'm not going to hound your student to come play football. They're coming to me.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I may ask, I see a kid like, hey, what do you do in the fall? Why don't you play? Like, what are the barriers in your way? Let's talk about that. But I'm not hounding them every day. I'm not dragging them out to practice. I'm not begging them. I don't have to because they realize that what they get from Coach Ewing is real. It's me every day. They see it. They see it in the hallways. And parents that want to question it, like I can't tell you enough that, like, I'm not chasing them. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said earlier, every week there's another kid talking about it. So we're just building it slowly, but we're building it up and we feel it for sure.
Well, I can't wait to catch a game this fall.
Weeks 1 and 2 we're at home this year. So
okay.
I think it's the second week in August is week 1. So
okay. Sounds good. Where's somebody pick up some swag for it?
So right now with the football program, there's nothing available. I'll have, thinking of my timeline here real quick. First week of June, I'll have something come out from a company called X-Grain. They do all of our team like travel gear and stuff like that, but the community can buy from it too. You'll just have to pick it up at the school, or I can deliver, but I don't want to deliver to everybody.
Yeah.
I love you guys, but no. The official team store will open up probably around that third or fourth week in July. So it may be a little late for the start of the football season. I do that. We have a statewide moratorium the first week of July. And then if you live in this community and you're listening to this podcast, you realize how big the fair is in this county. So I'm going to get 3 kids in the weight room and 5 kids at practice if I try to practice during fair week. So we shut down during fair week as a football program and just say, hey, go have fun. So really those first 2 weeks in July are kind of burnt, right? And I'll plan my family vacations around that and probably won't be in the area for some of it. But that week we come back, I've got everybody in place. I can kind of put all that stuff out. We'll put it out on Facebook. They'll get little flyers to hand out. I don't use it as a fundraiser at all. I want you guys to be able to buy gear as cheap as possible, but I also like to give everybody the ability to buy nicer stuff too, right? If you're somebody like, I think of, I'm going to call him out here, but Coach Josh Smith only wears Nike because he's bougie. So like wherever I go, like I got to make sure that I get Nike stuff so he can order some too, right? And I know that some people would prefer to wear that over something else, and I want to make sure there are options. So the company I'll probably run that through is BSN. They're nationwide, they're huge, but I've got a really good reputation with their salesmen. So we normally get some other stuff and some kickbacks from that off of purchases. So we'll blow that one up this year to the community. X-Grain will be available as well, but once again. That stuff, you can get all that stuff customized and like it can get a little pricey for some of it. The quality's really it's really high. It's just not Nike labeled and all that stuff. But yeah, once we get all that stuff rolling, I know baseball had a store open. I don't know if it's open anymore. Softball might have something open currently. I don't know. There was a store available on the athletic website. I don't know if it's there still or not. I'll have to ask and get back to you on that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. But yeah, the stuff kind of just rolls in between each sport for season to season, and then they kind of each do their own design and all that stuff. So yeah, it's available most of the year, just not 100% of the time, I guess.
Okay.
Hats. I'm gonna try to do hats again. I did hats my first year, and everybody loved them, and then last year I kind of
dropped the ball. Did you
drop the ball?
Fumbled, huh?
Well, we had a couple of designs, and the coaching staff couldn't decide on which one they wanted. So I got a little upset, and I was like, all right, screw it, we're not doing hats. You guys can eat that one. So yeah. It is what it is.
Right on. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing everything football. And
yeah, absolutely. Let's come back during the season a couple times and we'll talk about what's going on here. And if you want to do something in the whole county, I'm sure I can get Coach Beavis to come talk too. He's
sure.
He's at all the radio shows I'm at too, so I might as well get him to one more.
Okay. Yeah. No, sounds good. Excuse me. The premise of the podcast is just all things Newton County, and
right.
With everything going on at the school right now, I just having somebody that has like that in-person knowledge, I just thought would be good. And and from what I can tell, a lot of what you're talking about is in a positive light. And, I think that's good. And I've seen some kids, like actual students of North Newton, speak out on Facebook, and, they talk about it in a positive light. And, I think seeing some of that is a really good thing. Hearing some of that's a really good thing. And, it's not all doom and gloom.
It doesn't get said enough, right? You're saying hearing it's a good thing, like it doesn't get said enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's, right. Once again, that's kind of the problem with Facebook is it's easier and more accessible to get to the bad stuff than it is the good stuff.
Yeah.
One way or another on how you feel about algorithms, but that's how they're designed.
Yeah, that's the intent.
Right. They want you to be upset because you're going to click on more things.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's part of it. And you're right. We've had students reach out and say some nice things and if there's one, there's a dozen more that would do the same thing. They're just they're not allowed to, or they don't want the spotlight or whatever it may be. And I realize that we see it every day in the building. So unfortunately, in schools, like Not everybody's allowed to walk in whenever they want and all that stuff. But like, I really wish that people could. I really do. Because it would make our growth process so much easier.
Yeah.
So, and it's once again, that's not just a football thing, right? I think of, you know, the things I deal with on the education side every day, you know, our special ed department and what they go through. Like, I can't think of anything that I would be worse at than special ed. Like, I don't have the patience, right? Those ladies that work down there, like they're saints. They're saints.
Yeah.
You know, and the administration side and like having all the problems pile up on your desk, like I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
I got enough. I got enough of my own stuff. I don't need 30 other teachers with all their random stuff, or, you know, a teacher that got tired of a kid and they want to send him out. Like I get it. Like, yeah, send the kid out, but like they got to go somewhere else. And like, now that's somebody else's problem, and they've got their own problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the nature of education. And I get it. Like, they signed up to be administrators. I'm not saying anything bad about anybody, but like, man, the problems stack up every day, no matter where you're at.
No doubt.
So, and you know, we're in junior high gym, like our 7th and 8th grade classes are together. So we have, I think it's our block 3 class. There's almost 60 kids in it in one gym.
Wow.
Right. So like,
it's a lot of kickball players.
It's a lot of everything. Right. And like the you know, the moments where you kind of create your own chaos, because it's what gym is. Right.
Yeah.
And you're trying to, like, I got 2 eyes. I can't see everything.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of it. So education's a different monster than a lot of people realize. It's not just, you know, sitting around and letting kids write out arithmetic problems and slapping their hands when they say something bad. Like, we can't do that anymore. Yeah. So, you know, we've got our hands tied in certain areas, and we're trying to deal with other people's problems all the time.
Yeah. Trying to do the best you can with what you got.
Right. Right.
Well, I look forward to catching a baseball game and certainly a football game this fall. So good luck to you and the team. And when you're ready to come back on, just shoot me a text or hit me up on Facebook, and we'll set it up, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate all the time, and your setup here is incredible. Like, I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And we can get some stuff going for football specifically, for sure. And we can do that with the whole county. I'd have no problem setting that up and getting that taken care of. And the other thing I really think is important, that you're the person running this right now, because you are new to the community, and you don't have a big
bias.
You don't have a big, well, you don't have bias. You don't have a big political agenda. None of that stuff. Like, you're just like, hey, I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on here. And I feel it every day.
I
feel it. And like, man, I hear stories every day. I'm like, man, what if I would have known that 2 years ago, I would have approached this differently, you know? Yeah. So it's important that you're the person doing this. I think that's really cool.
I appreciate that. And yeah, have them reach out, and happy to have them on. And
we'll do.
I really appreciate your time, and know you got a family to get back to, so we'll wrap this up. And
they're probably in bed by now, so it's all right.
Yeah. And then we'll say go Spartans, huh?
Yeah, hail to the victors. Go blue.
All right, man. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you liked what you heard, or even if you didn't, I hope you will like and follow the show and join us next time. If you have someone you want us to talk to, or you want to hear from, or whatever organization that might be, shoot us an email at nci92@outlook.com. We'll try and get them on the show. Thank you. See you next time.